Come on in, come on up, come on over for the merriest time of year. Come on up, come on in, get together for a good time. Smile, my dear. Come on in, come on up, come on over. We'll be dancing round the tree. So let us have a swinging Christmas, just like 1, 2, 3. We know the time is short, we blink and then it's gone. So we better make the most of what we've got. So take your neighbor by the hand and join the dance parade before the clock strikes and it's all too late.
Hey everyone, it's Justine, and I hope you had a chance to watch my presentation for the Create with Cricut Joy Summit. We made this little cute mini card with a little bit of a customization where you can put a family photo in there, and learning all sorts of techniques using the contour tool, which was new to me for like the longest time. I mean, I've been a Cricut user honestly since the very, very first Cricut ever came out. And I've loved the Cricut, and I mainly used it in my classroom, not my craft room, shockingly enough. And so learning all the tools with Design Space was something new to me for quite a long time, because I always used those keypads and things like that, and back in the old school way of doing it. And it's been a really awesome journey getting to know all the buttons and what they can do, and what you can do with Design Space, and how you can kind of make your traditional card supplies and bring them into the digital world and get more use out of them and all that. So generally, I am a card maker that is focused on paper crafting, and more so, you know, stamps, dies, stenciling, getting your hands dirty, that kind of thing. And the Cricut I pull out anytime I need to do any sort of customization of anything, really, is when I'm always pulling it out. And you can see, you know, I make all sorts of cards and that kind of stuff. So that's me. I'm Justine, and I have a YouTube channel if you'd like to check it out at any point. I do lots of videos on card making tutorials, and I also have a giveaway going on during the summit. So be sure to sign up for that. It's a 1-year membership to my VIP program, where you get behind the scenes looks, videos, extra tutorials, live crops, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah. So are there any card makers in the house? I'd love to know. Who's a card maker? Who makes other projects? I'd love to hear about it. Yeah. Okay. I think that someone had to ask me where I'm from. Sorry, I didn't see the question right away. I was busy chatting. Yeah, I am from Canada originally, and I now live in Stuttgart, Germany. Yeah. So I have lots of time to craft because I don't have all that much of a social life being overseas. Yeah. So yes, if there's no questions at the moment, I just also wanted to mention that I do host the Stress-Free Card Making Summit. If anyone is interested in checking that out, it's at the end of September. You can go to stressfreecardmaking.com and sign up for the waitlist for that. It's super fun. Yeah, so that's the funnest event that is coming up, stressfreecardmaking.com. It's a summit just like this one, where you can attend for free. You can get a ticket if you want, that kind of thing. But yeah, we're just in the process of filming everything and getting everything ready, and it's always an exciting time. And I also host the Paper Crafters Get Organized Summit, and you can go to papercraftersgetorganized.com to sign up for the waitlist on that one as well. That takes place in the spring. Anytime you're in the mood for spring cleaning, you want to get your craft room organized. It is a really great summit to be a part of. Yeah, so those are the 2 events that I have going on right now. Do I use a manual die cutting machine? If so, what would you recommend? I've only used a Cricut. Yes, I use manual die cutting machines all the time. I've probably owned every machine out there on the planet, so I have a lot to say about them. It kind of depends if you like to crank manually or not. Some people who don't have a lot of strength or in their hands or anything don't like the manual ones. So if you're going for an electric one, manual machine, I recommend either the Sizzix Switch or the Gemini Junior. Both of them are really good. And for the manual ones, like the cranking ones, old school, I like the Spellbinders Platinum 6 and the Big Shot from Sizzix. Both of those work pretty much the same. Yeah, so it just depends if you want to manually crank or not. I do find with the electric ones, like the Sizzix Switch, the Gemini Junior, that kind of thing, you have a lot more pressure. So if you're using dies, and for those of you who don't know what dies are, they look like this. If you get a better impression, and anything that's intricate, it'll cut like butter through them, which is really nice. You might not get that from the manual one, or you might have to, really play with the sandwich in order to get it to cut where you don't have to poke everything out afterwards. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation for that machine. Base card, but how did you do the flower? Does the machine tell you when to cut out in each color cardstock? So in the video, I'm pretty sure I go over like how to do this. So what originally the image was what is shown in white on here. And with using the contour tool, you can isolate certain parts of an image. And all I do is just switch the color once I isolate them. Like I switched the flower petals to red. I switched the leaves to green. You don't have to put them in any color you're going to cut out. It's just, for me, it's easier to remember which color cardstock that I'm using. And then once you hit the cut button, it will show up the mat. You'll have a piece of red cardstock, and it'll show you what it's all going to cut out. And then you can just use your red cardstock and get it cut. So yeah, you can turn any sort of image that's a lined image, and lined images are just simply like, I guess you could say, outlines of images, or if you think of like a coloring book as a kid where all the empty space is in the centers for you to color and do something with, you can make a layering die like this one. And yeah, they're really, really cool. So any image like this, you can turn into multiple layers if you want by using that contour button, and just experiment. And there's tons, like not just even my video, if you go on YouTube or even during this summit, if there's anyone doing a contour button feature, you can find lots of tutorials on the contour button. And it's a really handy button to have for sure. My favorite card making technique. I have a favorite, and then I have one that I do the most often. So I'll answer that. So the one I do the most often is ink blending. So this kind of thing, if you look at this, it's just taking like layers of ink, blending them on top of each other to create backgrounds or create images in this case. That's the one I do the most often. And my favorite technique is heat embossing. And yeah, it's just so pretty. I just love it. Heat embossing is essentially you stamp in a clear ink, cover it with powder, and melt it, so that, because like white inks don't usually work very well, or they're not very clear. So having embossing powder is super helpful, because you melt, like it's like a little tiny plastic dust, and they melt and are really vibrant, and they're so fun because they resist ink and all that stuff. And yeah, it's really cool. What kind of ink? So you can see back here, I have two types of inks that I use the most often. So I use Catherine Pooler inks for pretty much everything, and like stamping wise. And then if I'm doing any sort of techniques where I'm making backgrounds, I'm getting messy, that kind of thing, I use the Distress Oxide inks from Tim Holtz. I used to have like 20 different types of ink brands, and I've definitely pared it down over the years to those two, and I absolutely love them. Bring on the questions. Yes, I'm here to answer any questions, whether it's Cricut related, general card making. I can answer anything about myself, or yeah. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search my name on YouTube. I want to make that number go up. What paper do I use for card bases? Oh, that's a tough one, because the paper that I use for card bases isn't great for the Cricut. So I use Neenah Solar White cardstock. It's not exact index. It's a little bit more expensive, Neenah Solar White. And that's the one I use. I use 80 pound. I used to always use the 110 pound, and then any layers I would put on top, I would use the 80 pound, but I found that the 80 pound actually works really well just as it's on its own as well. And usually I'm adding layers to my cards anyway, so they thicken up as it is. So I can reduce the weight a little bit by using the 80 pound, and I don't have any issues whatsoever. I mean, you can see they stand up with no problems. And for when it comes to the Cricut though, When I use it, I have to always double cut, just if you happen to get that cardstock. I use a lot of the times the Tonic Studios cardstock just because I find it's nice and thin, but it's not the greatest for card bases. It's almost too thin for card bases, but that's the cardstock I prefer for Cricut use. That's available here in Europe. And that's the thing, is I'm a little bit more limited than my American friends with cardstock choices. Can I make this card fit in the standard double fold? Don't know what that means. I'm not too sure what that question means. I mean, if you're talking about like a regular, like a card that's bigger than this one, sure, you could just resize it. Yeah, it's just a double folded card. I hope that's what you meant. I'm sorry if you didn't. Do I use special paper for different inks? Generally not. I mean, I use primarily white cardstock, and if I want colored cardstock, usually I'll color it with inks, or I will make my own in that sense, just because I find paper really overwhelming when I get too much of it and too many colors and all that stuff. So my Nina Solar white cardstock works excellent with the inks that I use, and any cardstock I've tried really, as long as it's not too glossy. If it's glossy, then I usually have to like heat it a bit for it to dry properly. So yeah, I've never had any issues with the cardstock that I use. I've used tons of brands: Gina K, Concord and Ninth, Simon Says Stamp, Basil. Yeah, and I haven't had any issues yet. I use the Cricut foil transfer kit. I have foiled with my Cricut. I've used the We Are Memory Keepers version that was out many years before Cricut ever came out with their own foiling tools. So I'm not sure if it's just like that's what you're referring to, because I'm not super familiar with the Cricut accessories. But if it's just the Cricut for foiling use, I used the We Are Memory Keepers one. It worked really well. I assume the Cricut one works just as well, if not better, for that matter. Because I said I use my Cricut, but it's not my main focus of what I do. I use the Cricut mostly, or I use foiling. I use a hot foil machine, it's called, and I like to use toner foiling with a laminator as well. So there's lots of options for getting the foiling look out there that doesn't necessarily use the Cricut, but the Cricut foiling tool that I have used worked really well. Yeah, I have a video on it, I believe, on my YouTube channel. If you search Justine Hovey Cricut foil, I'm sure it will come up. How long have I been overseas? It's been an on and off thing. So I believe about 7 years, roughly. Yeah. I did a 1 year, 3 years, 4 years. I think I'm at 8 now. Yeah, I was a nanny for a year, and then met my now husband, and then we did long distance for a while. I moved back while he went to school. We did an exchange year in Scotland, and then I moved back here in 2019 and have been here since. So yeah. Do I have a special heat gun for embossing? I used the Wagner heat gun forever. And that was a really good one. And then it died after about 15 years, which I think is pretty decent. And now I have the Wow embossing heat tool. I just figured, since Wow is like an embossing company that focuses entirely on embossing, they definitely know what they're doing when it comes to creating a heat gun. So I have this one, but the Wagner one worked just as well. Martha Stewart one worked well, if you still have that one from back in the day. I haven't run into one that is actually bad. So yeah, those are the 3 though that I've tried. I have a dream box. What do you love best about it? So I don't have a dream box. Actually, this is a brand box. This is the European version, I guess you could say. The main difference is this. So it's like a pull-out slide instead of a fold-out slide, which I liked a lot better than the fold-out. Yeah, so I mainly chose this one just because of shipping purposes. The dream box wasn't available here, or isn't available here anymore at the time, just because of the shipping costs. What I like most about it, you know what? I actually I have a presentation coming up at the Get Organized Summit coming up soon, and you know what? The thing about the dream box is it seems like a dream, and it is a dream. It is an amazing box. And the only reason though I bought one is because I was kind of kicked out into the hallway and you can kind of see I'm just kind of in the middle of the apartment, and it was just more of a space thing. But the actual like concept of organizing this thing is just using boxes, really. So you can seriously just take like a Billy shelf from IKEA, grab yourself some boxes and stack a whole bunch of them, and you got yourself a dream box. Because the chances of you actually taking the time to fold them up and everything like that, hard to say if you'll actually do it. I always said I would fold it up when I was done for the day, and I never do. But I do love it. It's a good solution. Do I have a scoreboard that I prefer? I actually never really use a scoreboard. I use a scoring tool on my trimmer. I used like the old Stampin' Up paper trimmer forever and ever and ever. And I just got this one because the other one retired and didn't have blades anymore. And the only thing I don't care about this one is that if I'm doing like a full sheet of paper, there's not enough room for these to go entirely down. So I always have like a small little piece that's not done on a full sheet of paper. I am thinking of getting a scoreboard, actually. I had the Martha Stewart scoreboard from back in the day. I think all scoreboards, you just have to know, like, do you need metric or imperial, like inches and centimeters, or millimeters and, or inches and, yeah, inches or centimeters and millimeters. And then you're good to go. ScorePal makes great ones. I think that would be the one I would recommend. Yeah. How long have I been card making and how did I begin? I began card making, I was 17, 18, doing the math, 17 years. Yeah, roughly 17, 18 years now. I started scrapbooking, and then I kind of got into card making at the same time because it uses very similar supplies. And I got started kind of online not too long after that. The main reason was I was introduced to like a direct sales company close to my heart, because in my hometown, they didn't really have a lot of supplies that I could buy. And 17 years ago, online ordering in Canada wasn't much of a thing. So I started with that, saw people blogging, thought, hey, I can do that. Then I discovered YouTube and thought, hey, I'm going to do that too. And just kind of went from there. It was just supposed to be a hobby and turned into a little bit of a side business. And I love what I do. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I never thought I'd be doing all this, like summits and videos and blogging and social media and all the things that are out there. It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. Oh, thank you. I was kind of planning on keeping that a secret, but that's okay. No, it's not a secret. I told my VIP group already. Yeah. Thank you. It's not really something I can keep a secret anymore. How do you store your hot foil plates? Let's see. I just put a video on it. So if you want to check it out, as I said, apartment living, small living, bike, craft room. Here we go. I have these IKEA Roscog cards. So I keep my die cutting machine up here, my hot foil machine here, and then down below I have all my hot foil plates, and I keep them in magnets and envelopes, plastic envelopes. I got these on Amazon. They're fantastic and very affordable. I keep my dies the same way. They're in plastic pockets on magnets so they don't go anywhere. And yeah, that's how I store them. Oh yeah, I hope I didn't make anybody seasick. My apologies. Yeah, any other questions coming through? How do I like the dream box? I think I touched a bit on that just a few minutes ago. Overall, like I said, I do really like it. It helps me kind of stay organized, and there's a place for everything. Everything has its place type of thing, which is kind of the motto behind staying organized. I think the only con really about it is like the thickness of it. It's a very big piece of furniture, so it has to be in. It's very limited as to where I could keep it. And obviously the price. Yeah. It's not something I was ever planning on buying. What kind of lighting do I use? I use sunlight is what I use. So I have a really great window. I almost called it in German. I'm like, I have a really great fence though here. So I have a really great window here. I only generally film during the day. So yeah, other than that, I just got cheap lighting on Amazon for the few occasions because I'm in Europe. Sometimes I have to live stream in the winter, especially like at times where I don't have daylight. I got, a couple of the box things and from Amazon for like $100 for the whole set, or maybe it was even less than that. Nothing fancy. Yeah, but I only set those up really truly when I have to because I find it annoying to take them down. Yeah, just sunlight. Yeah, I got a tattoo for my grandfather when he passed away. It just says, "I'll carry you with me," and then it has his signature on it. Yeah. Do I do any other crafts aside from card making? Not really. No. I scrapbooked for a while and then I stopped because scrapbooking about myself the whole time is a bit weird. And now that baby's on the way, I'm going to, I think, start scrapbooking again. I just ordered a couple of things, a couple of pieces of paper and that kind of stuff. So I have that. I dabbled a bit in knitting. Yeah, nothing really caught me as much as stamping and card making, to be honest. So yeah, I like it. I don't necessarily send out all my cards. I do it a lot of the times just for fun, and that's okay. Everybody feels the pressure to send out their cards, but you don't need to. What tool would you find it difficult to craft without? Oh, that's a good question. My die cutting machine and my paper trimmer, obviously, and my Misty stamping tool. Those would be the three that I would take with me to a deserted island if I had to. My new stamp and foil line going. Yeah, so I partnered with Craft Stash, a company in the UK, and I came out with my first stamp line. So it's got stamps and dies and some hot foil plates. And that released, I think it was in April now. Yeah, and then the next one's coming in August. So I'm very excited about that. It's going well. The first release went really well. It's been a lot of fun and a really cool journey designing products. It was, again, never something I thought I would do. And I always let other people be the creative ones in that sense. But it's really fun to see what's out there in the industry. And then how can I don't think you can ever reinvent anything super new, but how do we just make it better or more user-friendly or easier to line up or that kind of thing. So I'm always looking at that kind of focus with my products and that they all kind of go together. Oh, that's a good question. You only have the embossing sandwich. So that would depend. If the embossing sandwich is too thin for what you, like if you're putting a die or something through it, what you could do is add pieces of cardstock until it's the thickness that you need it to be. But if it's too thick, I don't think there's anything that you can do. I don't think you can make your own plates as far as I know, unfortunately. Sure. Dye ink and pigment ink and when to use which. Okay, so dye ink is water-based. Which means that when you apply it to a piece of cardstock, it sinks into the cardstock. It's the most common type of ink that's out there in card making, at least in my card making world. And you can use it on mainly paper is what you use it for. Pigment ink is made just of that. It's made of pigment. It's a lot creamier and a bit messier, I guess you could say. It also needs to be heat set in order to dry properly. It sits on top of the cardstock rather than seeping completely in. So that is really useful for also for paper crafts. You can use it just the same, but you could also stamp usually with pigment inks also on fabric. Again, you have to heat set it usually in order to dry or let it sit for a really long time. And then there's in between called hybrid ink that's now available. Tim Holtz Distress inks are hybrid inks. Scrapbook.com, I think, are hybrid inks. And hybrid inks are a mixture between the two. So you get a little bit of a both worlds, best of both worlds. I personally just recommend dry inks if you're card making, stamping, making ink blended backgrounds, that kind of thing. Personally, I just prefer them. Yeah. What printer do I use? I don't really print a lot in what I do. I just have a normal HP 5200, I think it is, or something like that. I like HP because you can subscribe to their ink program. It's like Instant Ink or something it's called. So I pay like $3 a month or something for 25 prints or 50 prints. And then they send me ink when my ink's empty. So I hate buying ink. So I like the fact that I pay like a small amount. It's almost like investing in the future inks without it hurting the bank. Yeah, so I've used Evernote and Airtable. I use them kind of for different things. Evernote for organizing craft supplies, Airtable for organizing events. And I have not tried, I don't even know how to say this, Etsy? I'm not even sure. So no, I have not tried that one, unfortunately. Do I need to heat set the hybrid inks? No, at least the Distress Oxide, you don't need to. When you heat set them, I believe that those become permanent, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the thing. Dye inks and pigment inks, they're both water reactive. And so if I spray it with water, then you'll see the water droplets on it, and those are a really fun look. And dye inks, it doesn't matter if they've dried. If I apply water to it, it gets wet in the rain, whatever the case is, they will always react to it. And I believe with pigment inks, you can heat set them and they're permanent, but don't quote me 100% on that. Google it, because I'm pretty sure that's the case. But because I don't use pigment very often, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure people in the comments know, though. Can I show you some more cards? Sure. It's my drawer of all my finished ones. I don't know how many you want to see. I'm not going to show you all of these. But yeah, so I like to hot foil. So this is like an example of hot foiling. You can see the foil butterflies there and the shininess. Yeah, so I like to make a lot of clean and simple cards. You can see ink blending. This is all ink blending. I don't stamp a lot in color. I generally do lots of different techniques. You can see here, I love butterflies, so I have tons of butterflies. Layering stamps, I like lots of gold. You can see here. Shaker cards are a lot of fun. Yeah, I like, and this was one I did with a Cricut, for example. Like this is what I'm talking about with custom cards. So I have no Harry Potter supplies. I'm pretty sure because of copyright, nobody makes Harry Potter supplies or like official Harry Potter supplies. So I cut this out with the Cricut with an SVG file and then added it to my traditional card making. So I do like to use the Cricut in combination with my traditional card making. Yeah, that's kind of like a brief look at my style. And sometimes I just keep like half finished cards in my stash. So like if I have a birthday coming up or something, I can just quickly do this, but I could also kind of change this into a sympathy card if I wanted to, based on the colors and the design, you know, that kind of thing. So I like to stay kind of flexible. And yeah, there's another one. Yes, I love butterflies. I love white space. I love lots of layers. It's just a lot of fun. Any other questions for me? I wonder if anybody will take up card making after watching this, like the traditional kind. I always find Cricut and card makers, sometimes they mix really well and some people don't do one or the other. Very few do both. So where do you follow your card making adventures? Yes, so my name is my trademark, Justine Hovey. That's Justine, Justin with an E, Hovey, H-O-V-E-Y. And you can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Justine Hovey. I think my links are in the info box. I think Erin had told me beforehand. JustineHoveyClasses.com is where I host all of my courses and things like that. If you want to learn more, I have my VIP program there. I'm also on Instagram, but not super active, at Justine Hovey. Just started kind of dabbling in reels, but YouTube's my main area. Yeah. Any other questions for me? Or anybody interested in anything else for card making? Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone joining me for the live and coming up with some great questions. And oh, look at that. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. I appreciate it. And I hope you all have an amazing time at the Create with Cricut Joy Summit. The Cricut Joy is so much fun to play with. And I hope you're all learning new things and getting out and crafting, because that's kind of what I'm all about. Is I'm not here to convince you to buy anything. I'm here to show you how to use what you have. That's kind of what I do over on the YouTuber. So I'm kind of like the non-influencer, but the influencing you to get creative. Thanks so much for having me in the summit, and I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great time. Bye-bye.